here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. In this signature guitar tricks we're looking at Allan Holdsworth's Legato. Specifically his hammers from nowhere. Why he does this, how to do it, using 3 live Holdsworth licks that I've shoved together to form one bigger idea. So by the end of this video you should have an idea of how to hammer from nowhere, some reasons why you might want to do this, the true meaning of legato, we'll get into that later, and a small insight into why Allan Holdsworth's playing sounded so smooth and mellow with some fusion licks to show off with. Alright, first up, a bit of background information. I don't normally do this, but given the subject matter it seems relevant. So by his own admission, Allan Holdsworth never really wanted to play guitar, at least initially. He was much more interested in the saxophone, but his dad bought him a guitar, so, you know, he went on to become a highly competent world-class guitar icon, as you do. So like a lot of top-tier players, he wouldn't necessarily look to the guitar for inspiration. So by this I mean people like Steve Vai, Guthrie Govan and Jeff Beck will often say they're trying to imitate a vocalist or a human voice rather than listen to other guitar players. So with Holdsworth, he listened to kind of brass instruments, typically found in jazz or big bands, the aforementioned saxophone for example. Because of his sources of inspiration when trying to imitate the sounds he heard and translate them as best he could onto the guitar, his fingers sort of manifested that creamy, soft trademark sound. While I'm sure some of this was via osmosis, he stated that pull-offs always rubbed them the wrong way. If you pay attention, there's this kind of twangy prang kind of sound you get from them, which for him sounded a bit like a cat meowing, a far stretch from that kind of velvet buttery tone that he envisaged. So in order to circumvent this, he consciously tried not to use pull-offs and instead only use hammers. The logic being that this would generate a more kind of uniform sound and get rid of that irksome pull-off twang. By no means is the only player to do this, Greg Howe, Herman Lee from Dragon Force spring to mind, but this is a significant thread in the elegantly woven tapestry that is Allan Holdsworth's style. And this leads us nicely into the true meaning of legato. As modern guitarists, we have sort of appropriated the term. In the current framing, it tends to mean more of a way of playing without picking, plucking, strumming, or otherwise hitting the strings. While all these techniques can be used to generate legato in the classical sense, they don't necessarily produce a strict legato aesthetic. What does this mean? Well, as I understand it, legato comes from Italian, meaning tied together. A more specific definition I got from a tutor when studying music was without spaces, meaning the notes smoothly glide into each other. So you'd play a phrase smoothly, note into note, without spaces or rests in between them, in the sense that the notes, where they're picked or not, should have the similar tone, volume, and almost overlap as to produce sort of one continuous watery stream of music. Now, like I said, 9 times out of 10, we as guitarists just mean not picking, but it's really worthwhile knowing what the word means in a broader sense. If for nothing else, when someone does that, one of those weird like smug music theory flex in you, and they're like, okay, whatever, that's not even legato, bro. You can just cut them off and explain the differences between the classical meaning and the kind of by and large what guitar players mean when they say it. Tangents aside, so why would you hammer on from nowhere instead of pulling off? In this instance, for a truer legato in the traditional sense, a much more rounded and more even dynamics, which hopefully really highlights why Holdsworth specifically chose to play the way he did. Aside from this, passages might be easier to play without picking every note, sound, you know, kind of a bit more uniform, and also sticking to one type of finger mechanic instead of pulling off can make things a little bit less strenuous to play, well, for me, sometimes anyway. Okay, a bit of an unusual detour, but seemed really relevant. Let me know if you'd like more of these sorts of insights on this channel, and if you don't, you might as well let me know as well. If you are enjoying this and you'd like to see more of this kind of thing in your feed, click like, make sure to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But yeah, onto the basic technique and the signature licks. Okay, hammering 101, you want to strike the string with your finger. It's the exact same with hammers from nowhere. You just hit the string without picking it. Generally using the tip of your finger means you can use less force and get a stronger sound. I've gone into this in a bit more detail with my Steve Vai right hand muting video, card up there if you want some more examples. If anything, your first finger might be the troublemaker. We tend to hammer with the others, so it might take a little bit of time to get the old index finger up to scratch. But yeah, we're plucking the 7th fret here, and then instead of pulling off, what you want to do is lift this finger off the fretboard. I'm using my little finger here, hammer onto the 5th fret, and then fold another hammer on from nowhere onto the 4th. So we're plucking that, not pulling off, but hammering this note, hammering this one as well. So this might take a little bit of getting used to. If your muscle memory wants to pull off, try letting your fingers float above the string, because there'll need to be a bit of distance here for them to be able to hammer on anyway. So, you know, rather than anchoring your first finger on the 4th fret in preparation for the full off, just have it kind of above the neck. It's also worth playing about with anchoring or floating your thumb. I kind of find if I'm trying to do this kind of thing, having my thumb more off the neck, sort of like that helps. I generally play with more of a kind of grip, but having it back here for this kind of light floaty legato thing does seem to help me. These are the only hammers from nowhere in this bar, so I'd suggest taking a minute to try out that 3-note phrase. We have pick, hammer, hammer. Pick, hammer, hammer. Then we're playing the 6th fret on the G string, and sliding in a fairly controlled and timed way so that both the 4th and the 5th frets are clearly heard. Picking the 2nd fret, sliding up to the 4th to the 6th, and then playing the 4th fret on the D string. And that phrase all together. For lick 2, we pick up on the last 8th note of bar 1, sliding the 7th fret up a tone to the 9th, then descending with chromatic hammers, the 8th, 7th, and 6th frets. Again, what works for me is making sure my fingers aren't stuck to the fretboard. We then have a position shift, and you're using your 3rd finger to slide this grace note from the 6th to the 7th fret, back to the 6th. Hammer on this 4th fret, so again that's a hammer on from nowhere. And then a final hammer on from nowhere on this 6th fret here, on the G string. And the 2nd phrase, which starts again in that last beat of the 1st bar. Saving probably the toughest one for last here. Again, this phrase starts at the very end of bar 2, picking up on that 8th fret here. We then pluck the 6th fret on the G string, hammer the 8th and the 10th. From here on, we're hammering every note from nowhere, except that very last one where we slide down to it. So we have the 8th fret, 6th. On the D string, we have the 8th and the 6th. As a side note, you might want to try using either your 1st and 2nd or 1st and 3rd fingers here, just whatever feels the most natural and you can get the smoothest sound with. On the A string, we're hammering on the 8th fret, 6th again, and then sliding down to the 4th fret to resolve. And that 3rd phrase. And those full 3 bars. Okay, so just briefly, the underlying chords here are an F sharp minor 7 for bar 1, F sharp major 7 for bar 2, a B flat minor 7 add 11 for bar 3. And if those lovely chords have whetted your appetite, check out even more nice chords with the lesson card up there. I mean, you could reharmonize this, so for example, using a C sharp major 7 works with bar 2 and 3, although you could maybe use a major 6, that might sound a bit tastier here. But I went with the chords, well, from what I could hear of them from the live Holdsworth clips that these licks came from, is that these are non-diatonic chords, meaning not in the same key. For a rough idea of how to solo over this type of progression, check out my progressive metal soloing in 5 minutes lesson with the card up there. So in terms of the fingering, I used a root, a flat 7th, a flat 3rd, 5th, for this F sharp minor 7. Same idea for the major 7th with the root here, but then the 3rd and the 7th raised obviously. So we have root, major 7th, 3rd, 5th. Then for the B flat minor 7 add 11, we had a root, a 5th, flat 7th, and then the 11th. To analyse this stuff, lick 1 over that F sharp minor 7 chord, we had the root, flat 7th, 6th, 5th, blues note to the 4th, flat 3rd, then we're sliding the 4th up to the 5th, and then the root. Phrase 2, which was over the F sharp major 7 chord, we started off sliding the root to the 2nd, flat 2nd, root, 7th. Then we have this root, 7th to root slide, and then back to the 7th, then to the 6th, and then the 5th. And then phrase 3, essentially just a C sharp major pentatonic lick, but over that aforementioned B flat minor 7 add 11 chord. Messed that up there. There we go. So what we had here was the root, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, 4th, flat 3rd, root, flat 7th, 5th, 4th, down to the flat 3rd. That was a very brief look at Allan Holdsworth's legato technique, specifically his hammers from nowhere. This has been Signature Guitar Licks and Tricks. That's the playlist there. For more ways to spice up your soloing, check out this tutorial. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this, want to stay up to date with new content, hit subscribe, click like, that seems to really help the channel out, share across social media, leave me a comment and enable notifications by ringing that little bell on the side, if you feel so inclined. Cheers guys.